This is the Ask Faleskini podcast, where the modern economy is discussed from a skeptic's perspective. Mr. Faleskini helps you distinguish what is sustainable in our economy and what isn't. Not everything that glitters is gold, and not all mud is dirty. The podcaster Mr. Faleskini provides no-nonsense advice. He had it all, lost it all, went bankrupt multiple times, and is now attempting to come back from zero with sustainable growth. There are numerous coaches and preachers on the internet that preach about positive thinking and how life is all roses if you just care to see it that way. Well, Mr. Faleskini is definitely not one of them. We recommend you ask Faleskini to keep it real. He discusses the darker side of the current economic reality, the side that's more important for your personal and business finance. His first intention is to help you keep what you already have. Not to be a complete party pooper, Mr. Faleskini will also hint at the earning opportunities in the economy today. In order to please the almighty algorithm, please like, share, and subscribe. And now it's time to start taking notes. The mic goes to the podcaster, the one and only Mr. Faleskini.
Welcome to the Ask Faleskini podcast with a guest. I'm proud to present Nancy Steidl from London, UK. Nancy is an international business consultant and intellectual property law specialist at the Business Mission. Nancy, please tell us more about yourself. What is your story?
Thank you very much, Peter. Thank you, first of all, for inviting me onto your show. I'm very excited to have this interview with you. I'm born and bred in Canada. However, I reside now in the UK for about 25 years. I don't know where the time has gone. I'm an international business consultant and intellectual property law specialist at the Business Mission, as you mentioned. My approach combines legal experience with business insight, which really sets me apart from most people in my field. What makes me unique is the ability to guide on intellectual property matters while understanding the broader business context. I've got a deep knowledge of legal and business aspects, also stepping into AI, which we are going to discuss quite a bit through this interview. So the Business Mission, where I'm a consultant and the CEO of us, is a business consulting firm, which we deal with worldwide clients. We deal with helping them with the structure part of business plans, business strategies, and implementing and safeguarding their intellectual property in their business, and also through the artificial intelligence digital landscape as well. So in addition to my role as a CEO of the Business Mission, I really enjoy continuing my education by taking further degrees. I'm on my third master's at the moment. I completed an international business law degree at the University of London in 2021. Then I carried on to do an international business MBA at the Institution of Berlin. And now I'm in the international intellectual property law degree, again at the University of London. And I've got a book coming out. We can discuss that a little bit further on, which is launching at the end of 2024, which is all about starting a business using analogies in layman's terms.
Ooh, that's impressive. I'm really looking forward to all the things that I'm going to ask you during this interview. I would
bring it on.
I would like to start with intellectual property. As a fund manager, I know that we had always part of assets of every big company is also intellectual property. How about small companies? How important are intellectual property rights for small and mid-sized companies? How should owners and people that are just starting their business, how should they go about intellectual property right? What is the most important thing that they have to take care of?
Yes, I think there's a stigma where people don't feel that IP is very important for their startups, but it is actually one of the main assets that really needs to be looked at even before they go live. So things like trademarks, they really need to secure their trademark. Copyright is a different sort of in different jurisdiction. I know in the US you need to register it, but in the UK you don't need to register once you've written it. There's also patents and trade secrets. So before you even start a business, you need to really secure those because they're very important assets for any business. And so it is something you must look into before starting that business. Even a small business or a large business, secure your IP, which is very important asset in the business.
Okay. In US, there are certain players that will steal your intellectual property, and because of the expenses that or costs that court procedures will cost in US, it's almost impossible to do anything else but to take their first offer and move out. How is UK regarding this? Is it possible to defend your intellectual property right if you are a small startup and you have limited budget for your legal support team?
Well, yes, of course, you can defend anything, but it costs more to fire than to hire, Peter. So it's better to pay out that certain amount to get your trademark rather than going through these infringement issues, because that will cost you much, much more. Of course, anyone can defend their rights. I know there was a case with Katy Perry and another individual. I cannot remember her name, but she did throw a trademark infringement on Katy Perry for using her name or trademark and won. So, if you can creatively, it is money to fight these people, but creatively you can use resources that can win you infringements. But I would just advise, don't even go down that route. Just go secure your trademark or your patent, before you even start anything, so you don't get involved in those situations.
One of my mentors when I first came to UK in the 2000s, who taught me a lot about intellectual property rights, said there are two ways how you can make money of your intellectual property. One is to fight that nobody's using it. And another one is to let other people use your intellectual property. And if they make it big, just sue them for everything that they made in the past with your intellectual property. What's your take on that?
Well, of course. I mean, if you trademark a name and then you can license it out, there's big money there to be made. But yes, I mean, it's a dirty game, Peter, if you go down that route. Fighting all these people. Again, I just say secure from the beginning, and then you don't have these fights. Because sometimes there are the big boys out there and they will fight to the end, and then you might lose that battle and it will cost you a lot.
Is there any insurance that small company can pay for, like legal insurance, that will help them fight for their intellectual property right in the worst case scenario when someone big infringes them?
Well, there is business insurance, and if you are a limited company, there's possibly some insurance in there as well. But you are really testing the waters if at the end of the day in the UK, they do inform you if another application is coming in that may be similar, close to your name. And at that point, you need to really put your cards together and write to them, and or if you find out somebody is using, send a cease and desist letter and start the ball moving immediately.
Okay, another tip I would like to get from you for our users is a lot of small and medium-sized companies, they don't have a lawyer on their, let's say, mobile phone. So I was taught from an early age that because of our family tradition that we always have a legal team working for us. Every contract needs to be double-checked and signed with lawyers before you sign it as a director or CEO of the company. But most of the small and mid-sized businesses, they just go to the lawyer when they need a service, and they don't have a really good relationship. And I know in my cases, the biggest case or intellectual property right breach for my Swiss fund was 600 million that was breached by, so it was trademark infringement by an utility company. But if we would not have a prior relationship with legal team because of the enormous case that built up out of that, we would never win. Is it possible to go into any of these cases without a legal team that you know that you have worked previously before and that you have ongoing relationship with?
Well, that's a tough one, Peter. I mean, you can go to court and defend your trademark on your own, but I would not really advise that if you don't have the knowledge. I mean, I have now 7 years of IP knowledge. I could probably defend my trademark because I have done all those years in university, but you would have to read up quite a bit, but it is very good just to start that relationship with a lawyer or solicitor. Form that relationship in the future if anything appears. Like I said, you could do it yourself, but I think, it's a bit like building a house and thinking I'll draw the blueprint myself and try to build it rather than going to the specific qualified professional architect to get it done.
Thank you. That is really a nice way of putting it so that we understand that you need an expert for a job that is so demanding. Of course, you can do it on your own, but the quality might be more dependent on luck than
Of course, yes.
and also probably in the legal system, also the outcome of legal procedures will be depending on luck, not the pure knowledge and
Exactly.
legislation. Okay.
I mean, I tried to paint one of my walls once and it didn't work, and then I hired a painter. So it's very similar to that.
Thank you. That is a great comparison for our listeners to understand, especially for small companies that are just started to work, that are started to think about their intellectual property and how to protect them and how to go about it. Because it's not just knowledge, it's also an attitude that you have to develop towards intellectual property, because it's a way of doing business. If you have to maintain intellectual property, you have to keep all the records, you have to understand, you have to check the competitors and all this stuff if you want to be successful in managing your intellectual property as an asset and also make a profit out of it.
Yes, I think not many people are aware, or people who are starting businesses aren't aware, the huge value that a trademark or a patent comes with, but also the maintenance of it. Ironically, I've just written a blog about that will go out next week, but there's a lot of maintenance to any of your IP, which I don't think a lot of people take into account, because like a trademark, you need to renew it every 10 years. So you must be sure that you've got the financial funds for that. Same with the patent. And if you're trademarking a certain name in many jurisdictions, you're looking at thousands and thousands of pounds to keep the uphill of that trademark.
Thank you. That is important, because I believe that maintenance is extremely important in business, and that is so often overlooked, and it can be considerable cost, especially if you have trademarks that you are not using, that you're just protecting for some future project. This might become a burden, especially if you're a small or mid-sized business. I would like to take you into the AI. I know that you're an expert in AI and AI-related legislation. Most of our listeners is from US, but there's some from UK and some from other continental Europe. And I would like to have your point why US market is full of AI, but regulation is not in place yet, and why in Europe there's a place, so regulation is already in place, but there are not a lot of apps using AI available to the market now. How is this possible? Why is Europe first taking care of the rules, and then they will start to encourage market and why US is encouraging the market first, and then they will take care of the rules.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, AI is a real, for people that are not in the AI world, they're slowly seeing things happen. And I know you and I sort of discussed before that it was very interesting when COVID, for me, especially when COVID hit, it was almost like AI then snuck in at that time to emphasize I am here. So these sort of countries, still to this day, we're just trying to figure out the framework of how AI sits in certain countries. So if we look at the US is driving through a landscape of evolving guidelines rather than a centralized rule book still. So various sectors like healthcare and finances are incorporating these ethical concerns into the regulation, and they are emphasizing responsible AI use. I've got another article coming up, which is, who would be responsible if AI gives you a certain product or medicine? Or if there's a car that is self-driven, who's going to be responsible if that goes? So there's a lot of framework that still needs to be dealt in the US. The National Institution of Standard and Technology, NIST, is working on standards to ensure that sort of trustworthy AI. If you look at the United Kingdom, there's a lot of, they emphasize a lot on transparency and fairness in AI, through the AI code, which is issued by the Information Commissioner's Office, the ICO. So the government is actively considering a legal framework to ensure responsible AI, situations. So again, if I touch into healthcare, which a lot of AI is in healthcare, they also emphasize the ethical considerations and the data protection. Data protection is quite a big thing with AI. Sorry.
Can I interrupt you? As a legal expert, what is your take on AI, especially? Is the existing legislation good enough to handle all the problems that AI will cause, or is there a need for new legislation? Because in US, there is general opinion that existing legislation needs to be just applied, or that existing legislation applies to AI and all responsibilities, and that there just needs to be some practice in court and that everything is okay. And in Europe, everyone believes that there needs to be a complete set of new regulation in place in order to cover all the new challenges that AI pose to our society.
Yes, no, we need new legislation. I mean, it just doesn't work. It's interesting because, I am reading a lot about AI, and, even if I go back to old laws, from 1600s, they're very outdated, and it doesn't really comply with this massive movement into the AI world we're going. I know the EU has already taken that bold step with, proposing the Artificial Intelligence Act, so aiming to, harmonize this regular framework. And this act is based on those risks, introducing specific requirements for high-risk application. And it also addresses those practices that would be unacceptable risk to those individuals. So I do think that the AI needs actually a law on its own. It is so integrated and it is so moving quickly. I think the things that are coming through are faster than the laws that we can, endorse and regulate and put into the legislation.
Now I will give you a conservative remark that I often give when speaking with legal people. There's an old saying from Greeks, from ancient Greek times. The more the more laws that are in place, the worse the society is. And we are just putting in new legislation. And for small and mid-sized business owners, this is huge burden, especially because you don't have enough stuff, and usually the entrepreneur or the one that starts business is good in something technical. They have a solution for something. They are good either with their hands, or they have a special intellect, or something that they can offer to the market. And then they need to take care of all legal requirements. So what's your take on that? Should we have more legislation, or should we have more people that just behave?
Yeah, there's a fine line, Peter. Like, you do need boundaries and you need guidelines. It's a bit like saying, well, there's a road and we aren't going to signpost the speed level, but everybody knows it's a road and everyone should know that you should drive in a conservative manner. Well, that's not going to work. That's why we have, this is a 20 zone and this is a 30 zone. Yes, it can get a little OTT, and that's where I don't agree on. There just should be a certain guideline, which is not too over the top, but everybody understands, the guidelines, the boundaries to AI. I think collaboration is key. Like international organizations, they facilitate an exchange of information and the best practices. And then also the ethical concerns and the responsibility of A needs to be shared throughout these priorities. I mean, again, like if I touch into IP, we have the Berne Convention, we have the TRIP, and all those laws were put together. Well, I don't agree that there's all these different jurisdictions, because that gets really hard for the metaverse, because, that's another subject I'll go into some other time, but there's no jurisdiction there. But if there was a global trademark, I think it would help a lot than having all these different, because then, we look at AI and are we going to have these different laws in different countries, which then become even more, OTT.
Okay. I will touch a technical detail. Most of AI apps right now, they use neural networks as their prime algorithm to do things. And we know that neural networks, you don't have a trace what's going on. And then this believes that you cannot comply with GDPR. And should we adapt GDPR to AI, or should AI adapt to GDPR?
Right. Well, I think that AI it's a dance. So it's both ways. In my book that's coming up, and we'll talk about that later, I use a lot of analogies. So I just say, think of protecting your creative work in the AI world like tending to a digital garden. Okay, so to keep things safe, you need to understand the rules, like kind of having a map. And so regular updates and just making sure that you are safe with the GDPR in your apps is crucial for that sort of sector with AI.
Okay. Before we finish this interview, let's talk about your book that is coming out end of 2024. You hinted at it already, but I would like to know what is the purpose of the book? How will it help our listeners and entrepreneurs and business people? How will the book help them? How will you share all your experiences, and what will they benefit when they read the book?
Well, my upcoming book, which is set to launch at the end of this year, there is a pre-launch coming up sort of February, March. So this is not your conventional business book. It's a book that's crafted with layman's terms and using analogies. I find a lot of business books out there are very technical. People go to YouTube, they listen to videos, and they're just sort of getting knowledge, but not relatable knowledge. Think of my book like a compass that, guides you through this entrepreneurial complexity with a touch of real simplicity. The other thing I noticed is a lot of business books don't tap into IP at all. They don't tap into health as well, which is very crucial. I think I'll work 24 hours as an entrepreneur and I'll make lots of money, and then you're ill. So it's really it's really work smart, not hard, and map everything out. Yeah. So I always say business is very easy. We complicate it with overthinking and complexities.
Mhm. So what would you say is the easiest, or if you can share a tiny bit of your book, what would be your how would you compare business with everyday life? What would be the easiest thing to understand, so that the people that are doing their job, they're looking to go into their own business, how should they think about it when they go in their business?
I like that question, Peter, because I always say starting a business is like deciding to have a baby. So the 9 months in the womb is the planning part. Okay,
Mhm.
so you need to plan. And when the baby comes out, it needs a name. So that's a trademark. And then you can't expect that this baby is going to go make you money in the first year. I mean, it can't even walk. So the mentality when people think, well, why is my business not making any money? Well, you need to allow this business to grow and get structure. And theoretically, if you've given the time to this baby, the baby can stand in year 3. Again, you can't say to the baby, why don't you go out and get a job and give me money? Okay, the baby can't pay your salary. So if you've given it enough time, literally by year 5, hypothetically, this baby can start making you money. And furthermore, this baby has to grow strength. And then there's the key players that come in, the kindergarten teacher, the music teacher, all these other people come in. But in the beginning, it's really, you've got to do a lot yourself, unless you want to put more debt in the business, and then you put this weight on the baby. So I think that's the best analogy, I would say, when you start a business, to look at it like that.
I would like to have your take on it. Would you agree that years in business are about 7 years in a life of a person?
Absolutely. Absolutely, indeed.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else you would like our listeners to take from this interview? Is there any tips or trade secrets that you can share with our listeners?
Well, anybody with a mindset can start a business. And you know what it is? I don't believe in motivation. I believe in consistency. So if you constantly do the same thing over and over again, and when you decide to start a business, go get yourself a plant pot, some soil, and a seed. And every day you water that plant, you do something for your business. And you will see that tree will grow in the same parallel as your business. And you must keep going. If you feel exhausted, stop, take the day out, and then get back on your feet. But without your health, you've got no business. And it's like if you have a child, if you're not happy and healthy, you can't raise this child. And it's the same with business. So I do hope that people will cling into my book when it comes out in December. And, they can follow my author page, which is on Facebook, which is Nancy Steidl Author. I'm also on LinkedIn, so you can follow my page on LinkedIn as well. And, if you have any questions on business, you can send us an email at our website, which is www.thebusinessmission.com.
I will include all the links in the description below. And thank you, Nancy, for being my guest tonight.
Thank you very much, Peter. And well done on your podcast as well. They're very informative. I've seen many of them. So keep going with that because, knowledge is key. It's king.
Thank you, Mr. Faleskini, for this outstanding podcast. And thank you for listening to the Ask Faleskini podcast until the end. Mr. Faleskini would love to hear your feedback in the comments. And don't forget, if you want to know, ask Faleskini or listen to the Ask Faleskini podcast. In order to please the almighty algorithm, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.